I was looking out of the kitchen window, drinking my morning coffee, and watching Lucas play football with his sister Megan in our backyard. The Charleston sun cast a warm glow over our suburban neighborhood, and I couldn't help but smile. Life was good. Elisa's voice cut through my reverie. "Did you hear what I said?" she asked. I turned to face my wife. She was looking very polished, even in casual weekend wear. She looked ready for a magazine cover. "Sorry, honey, I was lost in thought. What were you saying?" Ellie rolled her eyes, but her lips curved into an affectionate smile. "I have to leave for Miami tomorrow. It's a last-minute business trip." "Miami? That's sudden." "I'll be gone just a few days. The Henderson account needs some hand-holding." "You know," she replied, setting down her mug. I nodded, though something in her tone caught my attention. "Everything okay with that client?" "Oh, you know, demanding as always." Elise waved off my concern. "Nothing. I can't handle it." The back door swung open and Lucas and Megan tumbled in, faces flushed from their game. "Mom, Dad, who wants to get destroyed in Mario Kart?" Lucas challenged, grinning. "I'll wipe the floor with all of you," I replied, in a joking manner. I teased her, but I couldn't help laughing. "You're both on. Let's see if your old man still has what it takes." We gathered around the TV controllers in hand. I saw Elise checking her phone. A small frown creased her brow before she quickly masked it with a smile. "Everything all right?" I asked quietly. "Just work," she assured me. We had a great afternoon of laughter and gaming. We chatted about the kids as they headed upstairs to get ready for dinner. I gave her a hug and said, "I'll miss you while you're gone." She leaned into me, but I could tell she was feeling a bit tense. "It's just a few days, Jack. I'll be back before you know it." The doorbell rang, interrupting us. I opened it to find Tom, my best friend and lawyer, grinning on the other side. "Hope I'm not interrupting," he said, stepping inside. "I just wanted to drop off these contracts you asked about. Great timing," I replied. "We're about to have dinner. Want to join us, Tom?" He hesitated, glancing at Elise. "I wouldn't want to impose." "Nonsense," Elise insisted, though her smile seemed a bit forced. There's plenty to go around. As we settled around the dining table, the conversation flowed easily. Tom told us stories from his latest court case, while the kids peppered him with questions about becoming a lawyer. "Elise," Tom said during a lull, "I heard you're going to Miami tomorrow." I saw a hint of annoyance, worry, and excitement cross Elisa's face before she nodded yes. "It's just a quick business trip. Nothing exciting." "I don't know. Miami sounds pretty exciting to me. Beaches, nightlife. Maybe Jack should tag along. Make it a working vacation." Elise laughed, but it sounded forced to me. "Please, you know Jack. He'd be bored out of his mind, sitting through my meetings." "She's right," I admitted. "I'll leave the client wrangling to the expert." As the evening drew to a close and Tom was preparing to leave, he pulled me aside. He asked quietly, nodding towards Elise, "Everything okay with you too?" I frowned. "Why do you ask?" "Just checking," he replied. Elise seemed a bit off tonight, but I told myself it was probably nothing. His words lingered in my mind as I bade him goodnight. I tried to shake off the feeling, reminding myself how lucky I was. I had a successful business, 2 great kids, and a beautiful, devoted wife. What more could I want? The next morning, I found myself in the kitchen again, this time watching Elise load her suitcase into her car. Rachel, Elise's colleague and friend, had stopped by the carpool to the airport. "You sure you don't want me to drive you?" I offered, not for the first time. Elise shook her head, pulling me in for a quick kiss. "Don't be silly," she said. "Rachel's already here, and you have that big meeting today." Rachel approached with an easy smile and reassurance. "Don't worry, Jack. I'll make sure she behaves herself in Miami. I'd be more worried about you," Elise teased. But there was something in her voice as they drove away. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important, but I pushed the thought aside, focusing on the day ahead. I had a business to run. 3 days into a Lay's trip, I found myself buried in paperwork when my phone buzzed. Tom's name flashed on the screen. "Hey, buddy," I answered, grateful for the, "How's Miami treating you?" There was a pause on the other end when Tom spoke. His voice was tight. "Jack, I need to tell you something and you're not going to like it. My stomach is in knots." "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Tom assured me quickly. "It's about Elise." I sat up straighter, dread creeping through me. "What about her? Is she hurt?" "Jack, but I saw her on the beach with another man." The world tilted on its axis. "What are you going to do?" "I know she's there for work," Tom said gently. I saw them kissing. I'm so sorry, Jack. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. There has to be some mistake. At least I hope there is. I took pictures. Tom cut in. I'm sending them to you now. I wish I was wrong, but you need to see this. My phone pinged with an incoming message. I opened it, and the first image hit me like a physical blow. Elise, my Elise, wrapped in the arms of a tall, dark-haired stranger. Their lips were locked in a passionate kiss. Jack, you still there? Tom's voice sounded far away. I swiped through the photos, each one making me feel worse. She was laughing, her head thrown back, the man's hand on her thigh, their fingers intertwined as they walked along the shore. Who is he? I croaked. I don't know, Tom admitted, but he looks wealthy, wearing designer clothes and an expensive watch. What do you want to do? What did I want to do? I wanted to wake up from this nightmare. I wanted to rewind time and never see these damning images. I wanted proof. I heard myself say, my voice cold and unfamiliar, undeniable evidence. Jack, Tom said cautiously, these photos aren't enough. I cut him off. I need to know everything, who he is, how long this has been going on. There was a beat of silence before Tom responded. Okay, I know someone who can help. A private investigator named Marissa King. She's discreet and thorough. Book her, I said without hesitation, whatever it costs. I want to know exactly what my wife has been up to in Miami. Are you sure about this? Tom asked. Once you go down this road, I'm sure, I replied. Steel in my voice. No more lies. No more secrets. I deserve the truth. As I ended the call, I stared at the photos again. The woman in them was a stranger, wearing my wife's face. How long had I been living with this imposter? How many other business trips had been a cover for her infidelity? I was angry. I tried to calm down, but I couldn't. I needed to take action, not make an emotional outburst. Elise thought she could play me for a fool. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of sleepless nights and hidden phone calls. Tom connected me with Marissa King, the private investigator. Mr. Reynolds, she began. I understand this situation is delicate. Can you tell me what you're looking for? I'm at my home office, phone pressed to my ear. I need to know who this man is and how long they've been involved. I need proof of the affair. I'll need as much information as you can provide about your wife's schedule and whereabouts in Miami. I gave her as much information as I could, feeling like a fool with each word. How could I have been so blind? I added one more thing. I want to know who this guy is. Not just his name, but everything about him, his background, his business dealings. I told her that level of investigation would incur additional costs. Marissa said that money wasn't an issue. I said, just get me what I need. As I hung up, a text from Elise lit up my screen. Miss you, honey. Can't wait to be home. Tomorrow, Piso. I stared at the message, while a lump formed in my throat. How many times had she sent me loving texts while in another man's arms? The thought made me want to throw my phone across the room. Instead, I took a deep breath and typed out a response. Miss you too, safe travels. The lies came so easily now. Was this how Elise felt every time she deceived me? Hours ticked by as I waited for news from Marissa to distract myself. I threw myself into work. I was looking over contracts and financial reports until my eyes started to burn. I needed to keep from imagining what it would be like with him. At last, my phone rang. It was Marissa's number. What do you have? I demanded. I'm at a place where I can't chat, she replied. It might be difficult to hear. I closed my office door and braced myself. Go ahead, I said. Your wife's companion is named Victor Blake. He's a real estate developer. He's very wealthy and, well, I've been following the case from Miami, and it seems like their relationship is pretty serious. I'd say it's been at least 6 months, maybe even longer. 6 months of lies and betrayal. I had a hard time keeping my voice steady, and the evidence was pretty extensive. Marissa told me she has photos, videos, hotel records, and other evidence that shows the nature of their relationship. I swallowed hard and asked her to tell me about Blake. What kind of man is he? Man, he's Marissa's tone turned grim. That's where things get interesting. Mr. Reynolds, Victor Blake has a reputation for using his wealth and influence to manipulate people. He's been involved in several questionable business deals, and there are rumors of other affairs, so he's a predator. I spat in a sense. Marissa agreed. He seems to target successful, attractive women in committed relationships. Your wife isn't his first conquest. The word made my skin crawl. Is there anything else I should know? Just one thing. Marissa said in my investigation that I uncovered I've got some potentially damaging information about Mr. Blake's business practices. It's not concrete enough for legal action, but it could ruin him if it got out. I've already got a plan in mind, and I've confirmed with Marissa that this is the right move. What should I do with this information, Mr. Reynolds? I'm going to hold on to it for now, as I may need it later. Thanks for your thorough work, Marissa. I ended the call with a cold determination. I had a feeling they had no idea what was coming tomorrow. Elise would be back home, probably armed with stories about her business meetings and maybe even a souvenir for the kids. She'd slip back into our life as if nothing had changed, but everything had changed. I was done playing the role of the oblivious husband. It was time to set the stage for my own performance. I had a feeling this was going to be a show Elise and her lover would never forget. The day Elise was due to return, I gathered Lucas and Megan in the living room. My stomach churned as I prepared to shatter their world. "Dad, what's going on?" Lucas asked, his brow furrowed. "Is everything okay?" I took a deep breath and said, "No, there's something I need to tell you both about your mother." Megan's eyes widened. "Is Mom hurt? Did something happen in Miami?" I said, my voice tight. "No, she isn't hurt. She has done something." I know this is going to be tough for all of us, so I pulled out my tablet and started playing the damning photos and videos Marissa had collected. "I warned you, but I think you deserve to know the truth." Lucas leaned forward, his jaw clenching. "Dad, you're scaring me." "Megan, what's this about?" Instead of answering, I hit play on the first video. The image of Elise and Victor embracing on the beach filled the screen. Megan gasped. "Is that Mom?" Lucas jumped to his feet. "What the hell is this?" I admonished reflexively. Then I said, "Yes, that's your." I showed them more photos and videos, each one making it clearer that Elisa had been unfaithful. Megan was upset, while Lucas was angry. I asked him how long he had known, and how long she had been cheating on him. "At least 6 months," I said. Once I admitted maybe longer. Megan shook her head vigorously, saying, "No, there has to be some mistake. Mom wouldn't do this to us." "I wish that were true," I told her gently, "but the evidence is clear." Lucas paced the room, his fists clenched. "I want to confront her right now," he said. "Right, we'll do that now," I told him, "but I need you both to stay calm when she arrives. Can you do that?" They nodded, though I could see the pain and stress written all over their faces. We didn't have long to wait, and within the hour, we heard Elisa's key in the lock. "I'm home," she called out cheerfully. "Where are you?" "Is everyone in here?" I responded, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. Elise appeared in the doorway, her smile faltering as she took in our serious expressions. "What's going on?" she asked, her eyes darting between us. "Why the family meeting?" I stood facing her directly. "How was your trip?" "Elise, productive." She hesitated for a fraction of a second. "Yes, very. The Henderson account is finally on track," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm because it looks like you were pretty busy with other activities. I nodded to Lucas, who hit play. On the tablet, Elisa's face drained of color as she watched herself kissing Victor on the beach. "Jack, I can explain," she began, but I cut her off. "Save it. We've all seen more than enough." Megan's voice trembled as she spoke. "How could you, Mom? How could you do this to us?" Elisa's eyes filled with tears. "Sweetheart, it's not what it looks like." Lucas laughed bitterly. "Are you kidding me? We literally just watched you making out with some guy who isn't Dad. What else could it possibly be? I never meant for this to happen." Elise pleaded. "It was a mistake, a 6-month-long mistake." I interjected. "Try again, Elise." She sank onto the couch, her shoulders shaking with sobs. "I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say." "How about the truth?" I suggested. "For once in your life, try being honest with us." Ellie looked up, her makeup streaked with tears. "The truth is, I got caught up in something I couldn't control. Victor was controlling. He made me feel alive again, and we didn't have that kind of relationship. Lucas demanded more than just your own family." "It's not that simple," Elise protested. Megan stood abruptly. "It is that simple, Mom. You chose him over us, over and over again." I placed a hand on Megan's shoulder, steadying her. "Your mother made her choice. Now, we have to make ours." Elisa's eyes widened in shock. I was taken aback. "I'm filing for divorce," I stated flatly. "I'm seeking full custody of the kids." "No," Elise gasped. "Jack, please. We can work this out. "There's nothing to work out," Jack said. "You destroyed this family the moment you decided to cheat." Lucas turned to his mother. "I don't want to see you anymore." "I'm not sure you're my mum, Lucas." "Please, Elise," Megan begged, her eyes full of tears. I pointed to the door. "I think you should leave now, Elise. We'll have our lawyers handle the rest." Elise stumbled out of the house, still pleading for another chance. I pulled Lucas and Megan close. "I know this is hard." They nodded, clinging to me as if I were a lifeline in a storm. In that moment, I vowed to do whatever it took to protect them from the fallout of their mother's betrayal. The next morning, I found myself in Tom's law office, my head pounding from a sleepless night. "How are you holding up?" Tom asked. As I slumped into a chair, I replied grimly, "The kids are devastated." Tom nodded sympathetically and said, "I can only imagine, but you did the right thing. They deserve to know the truth." I rubbed my temples and said, "I just want this nightmare to be over. What are our options?" Tom pulled out a thick file and said, "Well, the good news is that South Carolina is a fault divorce state." Carolina is a fault divorce state. Elisa's infidelity gives us a strong case, and we all know that divorce is never easy, especially with kids involved. Tom said, "But we have a secret weapon. You're a lawyer." I leaned forward. I'd almost forgotten about that. "What does it say?" Tom flipped through the document. "It's pretty standard stuff, protecting your assets in case. There's one clause that's particularly interesting. If infidelity is proven, the faithful spouse has the right to claim sole custody of any children from the marriage." I let out a low whistle. "That's intense. I don't even remember putting that in there." Tom shrugged. "It's not uncommon in high net worth prenups. The question is, do you want to use it?" I thought about what that would mean for AAS. She'd lose custody rights. Tom explained that visitation would be at the judge's discretion. The thought of denying my children access to their mother despite everything made me uncomfortable. "Is that really what's best for the kids?" Tom leaned back in his chair. "That's something. Ultimately, it's up to you, Jack, but remember, we're dealing with a woman who lied to her entire family for months. Can you trust her to put the kids' needs first?" I let out a sigh. "You're right, I need to protect them. Let's move forward with the divorce and custody claim." "All right, I'll file the paperwork today. We'll be dealing with family court, which can. It's hard to say what will happen, but with the evidence we have and the prenup, we're in a strong position." "What about our assets?" I asked about the house and the business. Tom checked the prenup again. "It's pretty clear that your business is yours, and the house and other joint assets are also yours. We can argue that Elisa's infidelity means she doesn't have a claim to an equal split." I nodded. I had a plan forming in my mind. I want to make sure the kids are taken care of no matter what. "Jack," Tom said cautiously, "I know you're hurting, but try not to let anger drive your decisions. The courts don't look kindly on vindictive behavior." Tom held up his hands in surrender. I knew he understood that I'd get everything in motion, but I had to make sure that Jack was ready for the fight that was coming. As I left Tom's office, my phone buzzed with a text from Elise. "Please, can we talk for the kids' sake?" I ignored it, my resolve hardening. Elise had her chance to think about our kids. It was now my turn to protect them, no matter the cost. In the days that followed, I threw myself into gathering information. If Elise thought she could walk away from our marriage with her reputation intact, she had another thing coming. I arranged to meet Tom at a discreet cafe away from prying eyes. "What have you found?" I asked as soon as he sat down. Tom looked around before handing me a folder. "I don't think you'll like this, Jack." I quickly looked through the pages, my anger growing with each revelation, multiple affairs and embezzlement. How far does this go? Could it sink Blake's entire empire? "The question is what you want to do with this information," Tom replied. "I'm not sure I should share it." I was so shocked I couldn't think straight. We could leak it to his business associates, the media, anyone who'll listen. Tom raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure that's wise? Once this gets out, there's no going back." I said firmly, "Good. Blake needs to learn that actions have consequences." Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel, Elise's supposed friend. "Jack, can we meet? There's something you need to know." I showed Tom. The message said, "What do you think?" He frowned. "Be careful. She might be trying to cover for Elise." I nodded and quickly typed a response to meet Rachel at a nearby park. An hour later, I found Rachel pacing nervously by a fountain. "Jack," she said as I approached, "thank you for meeting me." "What's this about?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. I knew about the affair I'd been covering for us. Fists clenched at my sides, I was seething. Rachel rushed on. I thought I was being a good friend, but I realize now how wrong I was. I struggled to keep my voice level. How long have you known? Almost from the beginning, she admitted. Elise swore it was just a fling, that she'd end it, but she didn't. Rachel nodded miserably. I want to make it right. Tell me what. I began to think of a plan. Rachel, there is something you can do, I said, outlining my idea. Watching her eyes widen, I added, Jack, that's brutal. That's not brutal, she whispered. It's worse than what they did to my family. Are you in or out? I countered. Rachel hesitated for a long moment before nodding. I'm in, she said. I owe you that much. As Rachel hurried away, I dialed Tom's number. It's done, I said when he answered. Rachel's on board. Time to get this show on the road. Jack, Tom said warningly, this is a dangerous game you're playing. I gazed out over the park, watching families enjoy the sunny day. Families like mine used to be before Elisa's betrayal tore us apart. It stopped being a game the moment they decided to play with people's lives. I replied, now it's war. The day of the divorce proceedings arrived, and I found myself standing outside the family court, my stomach in knots. Tom placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder and asked, You ready for this, Jack? I nodded, straightening my tie as ready as I'll ever be. We entered the courtroom and saw Elise sitting with her lawyer. She looked pale and drawn, a far cry from the confident woman I'd married. Our eyes met briefly before she looked away. The judge entered, and we all rise, please, he instructed. We're here today for the divorce proceedings of Jack and Elise Reynolds. Mr. Lawson, you may begin. Tom stood, his voice steady. Your Honor, we're seeking a fault divorce on the grounds of adultery. We have irrefutable evidence of Mrs. Reynolds' infidelity. Prenuptial agreement, we believe it to be overly punitive. The judge raised an eyebrow. I'll be the judge of that. Counselor, Mr. Lawson, please present your evidence. Tom nodded to me, and I stepped forward with the tablet containing Marissa's photos and videos as they played on the courtroom screen. I heard Elisa's sharp intake of breath. As you can see, Your Honor, Tom continued, Mrs. Reynolds, you had a long-term affair with Victor Blake, a real estate developer in Miami. The judge looked concerned. Mrs. Reynolds, do you deny these allegations? Elisa's voice was barely above a whisper. No, Your Honor, her lawyer quickly interjected. My client acknowledges her indiscretion. However, we believe the prenuptial agreement's terms regarding custody are extreme and not in the best interest of the children. I clenched my fists, ready to argue, but Tom beat me to it. Your Honor, if I may, we have a witness who can. The judge nodded and said, Please tell us about the nature of Mrs. Reynolds' affair and its potential impact on the children. Marissa took the stand and was sworn in. Tom began, Can you tell the court about your investigation into Mrs. Reynolds' affair? She was working. Elisa's lawyer stood up and objected. Your Honor, this is irrelevant. The judge said, The witness is recounting her direct observations. Continue, Miss King. Marissa nodded. During my investigation, I also uncovered information about Mr. Blake's character. He has a history of pursuing married women and using his wealth to manipulate situations to his advantage. I watched Elisa's face crumple at Marissa's words. Part of me wanted to comfort her, but I washed that impulse. The judge turned to Elise. Mrs. Reynolds, do you have anything to say in your defense? Elise stood, her voice shaking. I made a terrible mistake, Your Honor. I never meant to hurt my family. I'm begging the court to consider what's best for my children. They need their mother. I couldn't stay silent any longer, Your Honor. If I may speak. The judge nodded, and I stood. Elise betrayed not just me, but our entire family. She lied to our children for months, prioritizing her affair over their well-being. How can we trust her to put them first now? Elise's eyes filled with tears. Jack, please. But I pressed on. The prenuptial agreement was designed to protect our family in exactly this kind of situation. I'm not trying to punish Elise. I'm trying to provide stability for our children in the wake of her choices. The judge considered for a moment. I've reviewed the prenuptial agreement, and while its terms are indeed strict, Mrs. Reynolds signed it. Given the evidence presented, I see no reason not to enforce it. The divorce is granted with all terms of the prenuptial agreement to be upheld, including the custody arrangement. Elise let out a choked sob, but I felt only grim satisfaction. We left the courtroom. Tom clapped me on the back. You did it, Jack. It's over. But I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. There was still the matter of Victor Blake to deal with. I had a plan for him. With Rachel's help, I put together a dossier of Victor's shady dealings and past affairs. It was time to let the world see the real Victor Blake. I met Tom at a busy coffee shop and slid a USB drive across the table. "It's all here," I said quietly. "Every dirty secret, every backroom deal." Tom eyed the drive wearily. "Jack, are you sure about this? Once it's out there, you can't take it back." I nodded. "I'm sure Blake needs to face the consequences of his actions." Tom asked, "Will this affect her too?" I hesitated for a moment, then said, "She made her choice. Now she has to live with it." Tom sighed, but pocketed the drive. "All right, I'll make sure it gets to the right people anonymously over the next few days." I watched as the scandal unfolded. It started with a few whispered rumors, then exploded into full-blown. The media coverage was intense. Photos of A and Victor dominated the local news, while reports of his business irregularities made national headlines. My phone was ringing constantly, but I ignored calls from Elise and Victor. I answered when Rachel's name flashed on the screen. "Jack," she said. Her voice was tight. "It's everywhere." "Elise just got fired," she said. Rachel's voice was really shaken up. "She's a mess. And Victor, Jack, his whole empire is falling apart. His partners are jumping ship left and right." I said it a bit more harshly than I meant to, but they both need to understand that actions have consequences. There was a pause before Rachel spoke again. "Jack, I know I don't have any right to ask this, but is there anything else you need me to do? I can do it." Rachel had helped expose the affair, but she'd also enabled it for months. I finally told her, "If the media comes calling, tell them everything you know, no more lies or cover-ups." She whispered, "I will. I'm so sorry for my part in all this." I ended the call without responding to her apology. The story kept on going, and Victor's business associates started speaking out, revealing years of unethical practices. Elisa's name was dragged through the mud, and her reputation was in tatters that evening as I sat with Lucas and Megan watching the news coverage. Lucas turned to me and asked, "Did you do this, Dad?" His voice was a mix of awe and concern. I met his gaze steadily and made sure the truth came out. Megan hugged her knees to her chest and asked, "What's going to happen to Mom now?" I pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. "I don't know, sweetheart, but we'll get through this together, okay?" I was as hard as a rock again. The truth was out there, and they all had to face it. A week after the scandal broke, I was sitting in my office going over contracts when my assistant buzzed in. "Mr. Reynolds is here to see you," she said. "She's pretty insistent." I sighed and rubbed my temples. "Send her in," I said. Elise came bursting through the door, her eyes wild and red-rimmed. "How could you do this to me?" she asked. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my voice level. "I didn't do anything to you, Elise. You made your own choices, and they led us here." She slammed her hands on my desk. "My choices destroyed my life. I've lost everything because of you." "No," I said firmly. "You lost everything because you decided to cheat on your family. I just made sure everyone knew the truth." Elise collapsed into a chair, her anger giving way to despair. "What am I supposed to do now? No. One will hire me. I can't even see my own children for a moment." I almost felt sorry for her. "You should have thought about that before you started your affair." "It wasn't just an affair," Elise whispered. "I loved him." I laughed bitterly. "How's that working out for you now?" Elise's eyes flashed with anger. "He'll sort this out. He has connections and money." If I'd used the past tense, "Your boyfriend's empire is in ruins, Elise. He can't help you now." As if by magic, my phone buzzed. I put the call on speaker. "Reynolds?" Victor's voice was ragged. "What have you done?" I smirked. At Elise, I simply showed her the truth. "Blake, how does it feel to have your secrets exposed?" "You've ruined me," Victor snarled. "My business, my reputation, it's all gone." "Welcome to the club," Elise muttered. Victor's tone changed, becoming almost pleading. "Look, Reynolds, surely we can work something out. I have resources, connections. We could make a deal." I cut him off. "There's no deal to be made. Blake, you played with fire and now you're getting burned. Both of you are. Elise, stand your ground. You've got to stop this." I met her gaze coldly. "I do love you. Our children are why I'm making sure they understand that actions have consequences. This ends when I say it ends." Victor's voice crackled through the speaker. "You can't do this to us." "I already have," I replied, then ended the call. Elise stared at me, a mixture of fear and awe in her eyes. "I never knew you. I could be so ruthless." I stood up and came around the desk to face her. You never really knew me, did you, Elise? If you had, you'd have known better than to betray me. She reached out her hand, trembling. Jack. I stepped back. It's over, Elise. You made your choice, now live with it. As Elise left my office, I felt a weight lift from my chest. It was done. They'd faced the consequences of their actions, and I'd had my revenge. But as I sank back into my chair, I realized the hollow victory brought me little comfort. The real work was just beginning, healing my family and moving forward. I felt a weight lift from my chest as I slumped in defeat. It was done. They'd faced the consequences of their actions, and I'd had my revenge. But as I sank back into my chair, I realized hollow victory brought me little comfort. The real work was just beginning, healing my family and moving forward. And gradually, life started to find a new rhythm. Lucas and Megan were still coming to terms with their mother's betrayal, but they threw themselves into their studies and activities. I made sure to be there for every game, every performance, every moment they needed me. One sunny Saturday, as I watched Megan practice her soccer drills, Tom, he joined me on the sidelines and asked, "How are you holding up?" He handed me a coffee. "One day at a time," I said, shrugging. "The kids are resilient, but it's been tough." Tom nodded and said, "Elise and Victor, last I heard, Victor was facing some legal troubles, fraud and embezzlement, that sort of thing. I don't shed any tears for either of them." "You did what you had to do, Jack," Tom said quietly. "They brought this on themselves." I watched as Megan scored a goal, her face lighting up with pride. I just hope I did the right thing for the kids. "Speaking of doing the right thing, Tom," he said with a hint of amusement, "I couldn't help but notice you've been spending a lot of time with a certain private investigator lately." I felt my face warm. Marissa's been a good friend and understands what we're going through. Tom raised an eyebrow, asking if she was just a friend. I heard Marissa's voice came from behind us. "Who's just a friend?" I asked, unable to hide my smile as she approached. "You made it," Marissa said, grinning. Her eyes twinkled. "I wouldn't miss it." "How's our soccer stardom?" I asked. "See for yourself." I nodded towards the field, where Megan was expertly dribbling past her teammates. The practice together gave me a sense of calm. The past few months had been tough, but here with Marissa, I could finally see a future beyond the pain and betrayal. Later that evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Lucas looked up from his plate. "Dad, I was thinking maybe we could take that trip we always talked about. You know, the one to the Grand Canyon." Megan's eyes lit up. "Oh yeah, can we, Dad?" I glanced at Marissa, who gave me an encouraging nod. "You know, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do it." As my children cheered and began excitedly, I agreed. As we were planning our trip, I caught Marissa's eye. She smiled and I felt my heart skip a beat. She asked if there was room for one more on the trip. I reached out and took her hand in mine. As we sat there laughing and planning, I realized that despite everything we'd been through, we were going to be okay. Okay, more than okay. We were going to thrive. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with my children by my side and Marissa in my life, I was ready to face whatever came our way. The betrayal that had shattered our world had also opened the door to a new beginning, and this time I was determined to get it right.